Have you ever wondered how it is possible for an empire that, at its peak, stretched across continents, controlling vast expanses of America, Asia, and Europe, could decline to become a shadow of what it was? This is the case of the Spanish Empire, a power that dominated the world for centuries and whose fall offers not only a lesson in history, but also a reflection of human nature and power. The decline of the Spanish Empire cannot be attributed to a single cause. Rather, it was the result of a series of interconnected factors that intertwined over the years, deeply affecting its economic, political, and military foundations. To begin to untangle this complex mosaic, let us immerse ourselves in the Spanish economy of that time, which experienced a real earthquake due to the decisions of the crown. Imagine for a moment that the constant flow of gold and silver, dazzling and seemingly inexhaustible, was arriving in Spain from its vast colonies in the New World. This treasure, which could have been the envy of any nation, paradoxically became a curse. Why? Well, instead of serving as a stimulus for a strong, diverse, and self-sufficient internal economy, this easy gold led to rampant inflation. Prices skyrocketed, and with them, life became more expensive for the average Spanish citizen. This phenomenon, known as the Black Legend of inflation, had deeper and more perverse effects on the country's economic structure. Spain, with its pockets full of gold and silver coins, became a giant with feet of clay. Instead of fostering local industries, crafts, or agriculture, the real engines of a healthy economy, Spain began to import almost everything it needed. From textiles to food, to tools and technology, it increasingly depended on its European neighbours, who, unlike Spain, were investing in innovation and the development of their own economies. Thus, while gold and silver flowed out, what came in was an increasing dependency on foreign goods and services, further eroding the Spanish economic base. This vicious cycle weakened Spain, transforming it from a producing power to a primarily consuming nation. In retrospect, we can see how this excessive dependence on colonial riches and the lack of vision to develop a diversified internal economy laid the groundwork for the economic challenges the empire would face in the future. This principle marks the beginning of a series of mistakes and challenges that, combined, would lead to the decline of one of the most powerful empires in history. As we delve deeper into this topic, we discover that, parallel to the economic problems, the Spanish Empire was engulfed in a whirlwind of military conflicts that spanned from the most remote corners of Europe to the vast expanses of its overseas colonies, also known as viceroyalties, despite the regime of exploitation and colonial subjugation. These wars, far from being mere whims of fate, were largely the result of an aggressive foreign policy and an excessive ambition to maintain its global hegemony at any cost. Each battle, each military campaign, was not only a demonstration of power, but also a bottomless pit that consumed resources that could have been allocated to internal development and progress. Let's imagine the situation for a moment. While Spain was entangled in these endless struggles, maintaining armies and fleets, the cost of supplies, paying soldiers, all of it absorbed an astronomical amount of resources, and this is where the famous Invincible Armada comes into the scene, that symbol of national pride that ended up being a tangible example of how military overextension can lead to a nation's ruin. The defeat of the Invincible Armada at the hands of the Royal Navy, led by Sir Francis Drake and other commanders, was not only a devastating blow to Spanish prestige, but also marked a before and after in the perception of its invincibility. This fleet had been sent by Spain in a bold attempt to invade the United Kingdom, with the goal of overthrowing Queen Elizabeth I and reinstating Catholicism. However, the repercussions of this disaster resonated far beyond the waters where the fleet was lost, affecting the morale, economy, and strategic position of Spain on the global geopolitical board. The failed invasion not only highlighted Spain's military limitations against England, but also reconfigured the balance of power in Europe, altering the power dynamics for decades. However, the repercussions of this disaster resonated far beyond the waters where the fleet was lost, affecting the morale, the economy, and the strategic position of Spain on the global geopolitical board. The failed invasion not only highlighted Spain's military limitations against England, but also reconfigured the balance of power in Europe, altering the power dynamics for decades. What these wars and defeats underscore is the dangerous trap of overextension. As Spain stretched its tentacles, defending tooth and nail every piece of its vast empire, it found itself increasingly trapped in a cycle of unsustainable military spending. This voracious appetite to maintain itself as a dominant power not only drained its coffers, but also diverted attention and resources from critical internal needs, such as infrastructure, agriculture, and technological development, which are essential pillars for the true strength and sustainability of any empire. In summary, while wars and military conflicts may have been intended as a demonstration of strength and dominance, they actually undermined the foundations on which the greatness of the Spanish Empire was based. This pattern of military overextension, combined with a weakened economy and a rigid political structure, laid the groundwork for a decline that, over time, would prove irreversible. Delving deeper into the roots of Spain's decline, we find a crucial aspect that contrasts dramatically with the dynamism of other European nations of the time: the rigidity of its social and political structure. This rigidity was not simply a quirk of fate, but the result of a deeply ingrained system that prioritized the maintenance of order and tradition over adaptability and innovation. In the scenario created by the Inquisition, where the control of religious orthodoxy and the repression of dissent were paramount, an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty permeated all aspects of Spanish society, including the economic. It is evident that the restrictive and surveillance-imposed environment seriously limited the willingness to take the risks necessary for entrepreneurship and economic experimentation. For example, the persecution of Jews and Moors, many of whom were traders and artisans who significantly contributed to the economy, culminated in their expulsion from Spain. This policy was not only a humanitarian disaster, but also undermined the country's economic base by eliminating a significant portion of its productive and innovative population. Additionally, the climate of conformity and fear of scrutiny impeded the adoption of innovative commercial and financial techniques that were emerging in other parts of Europe, such as modern banking systems and joint stock companies, which are fundamental to the development of modern capitalism. Meanwhile, in Northern Europe, countries like England and the Netherlands were embracing the winds of change. These emerging nations not only promoted exploration and trade, but were also laying the foundations of what we now recognize as the modern capitalist system. In England, for instance, liberalism was not just a fashionable word. It was an active policy that drove innovation through patent protection and the financing of new businesses. This conducive environment allowed inventors and entrepreneurs free from the yoke of censorship and stimulated by the prospect of profit to explore new ideas and technologies. The patent system in particular played a fundamental role. By offering inventors exclusive rights over their creations, it encouraged competition and innovation. This was not an abstract concept. It was a concrete policy that transformed the economic landscape, allowing technological advancements that would be the envy of the world. And while Spain was entangled in its old traditions, in England, financing entrepreneurship was not seen as a risk, but as an investment in the future. Banks and merchants, imbued with the spirit of English liberalism, were willing to put their capital behind innovative ideas, thus facilitating an era of unprecedented growth and development. This drive toward innovation and entrepreneurship, embodied in the patent system and the financial support for new businesses in England, would soon cross the Atlantic to North America. The principles of English liberalism, together with this spirit of innovation and the valuation of business risk as a future investment, became the seed of what would be the powerful United States. Upon establishing themselves in a new world, these concepts found fertile ground in the American colonies, where the lack of rigid structures and the abundance of opportunities allowed these ideas not only to germinate, but to flourish. Thus, economic liberalism deeply rooted itself in American society and economy, propelling the development of a country that valued individual freedom, innovation, and entrepreneurship as pillars of its national identity. This approach to innovation and support for entrepreneurship would be reflected in the rapid economic and technological growth of the United States, laying the foundation for its eventual rise as one of the world's greatest economic and technological powers. It is no wonder that by the end of the 19th century, Spain faced and lost to the United States in the Spanish-American War, an armed conflict that occurred in 1898 and marked the end of Spanish colonial rule in the Americas. This confrontation was rooted in the United States' support for the Cuban struggle for independence from Spain, which began in February 1895. Noteworthy in this conflict is that it pitted Spain, an imperial power with centuries of history, against the United States, a nation comparatively very young. Despite its relative youth, the United States proved to be a formidable force, not only militarily but also through its robust economy and firm commitment to the principles of freedom and innovation that had guided its development since its founding. The American victory not only reflected the decline of Spanish colonial power, but also underscored the rise of the United States as an emerging power, ready to take a prominent place on the world stage. This triumph marked a shift in global power, highlighting how the ideals of innovation, entrepreneurship, and economic liberalism, rooted in American society, contributed to its rapid rise and success in international confrontations. The lesson here is clear. In a constantly evolving world, adaptability and innovation are not just desirable, they are essential for the survival and flourishing of nations. Delving deeper into the complex web of causes behind the decline of the Spanish Empire, it is impossible to ignore the fundamental role played by its colonial system. This was not just any system in which Spain merely considered the viceroyalties a part of Spain, as if it had the same level of respect and consideration for the people. On the contrary, it was one meticulously designed to maximize resource exploitation and maintain strict control over vast lands and peoples. This approach not only reflected a utilitarian view of the colonies but also established a clear hierarchy in which the interests and well-being of the local populations were systematically subordinated to the economic and political goals of the empire. Imagine, for a moment, a system where everything, from the smallest resource to the humblest worker, was subject to relentless extraction and constant supervision. The Spanish colonial machinery not only extracted wealth but also imposed a regime of high taxes and oppressive policies that left little room for local development or autonomy. A palpable example of this aggressive approach to taxation was the Quinto Real, a tax that demanded that 20% of all gold and silver extracted in the Americas be handed directly to the Spanish crown. This tax burden, extremely burdensome for the local economies, illustrates the extent to which the empire prioritized resource extraction over the well-being and economic development of its colonies. In this context, the native populations and criollos, descendants of Europeans born in the Americas, found themselves caught in a web of exploitation that despised their rights and aspirations. High taxes and harsh living conditions sowed deep resentment, a spark waiting for the right wind to fan the flames of rebellion. And that wind soon arrived. The French and American revolutions were not just local conflicts, they were resounding demonstrations of the power of the people and the possibility of overthrowing oppressive systems. These events resonated across the oceans, reaching the ears of those subjugated under the Spanish yoke in the Americas. They became living examples that another world was possible, inspiring oppressed populations to envision a life outside the Spanish colonial system. This breeding ground of discontent and aspiration, fueled by the example of successful revolutions elsewhere, eventually led to the wars of independence in the 19th century. These conflicts were not mere uprisings, they were the result of decades, even centuries, of oppression and exploitation. The independence of most of the American colonies was not just a territorial loss for Spain, it was the collapse of a colonial system that had sown the seeds of its own destruction through its policies of exploitation and rigid control. These independence movements marked the end of an era and served as a somber reminder that systems based on oppression and exploitation are ultimately destined to face resistance from those they subjugate. Ultimately, the history of the Spanish colonial system teaches us a critical lesson about the human and political costs of exploitation, an echo from the past that resonates with warnings for the present. The decline of the Spanish Empire teaches us that no power is eternal. The combination of a weak economy, constant conflicts, political and social rigidity, and colonial discontent created a cocktail that no empire, regardless of its past greatness, could withstand indefinitely. The history of the Spanish Empire is a reminder that adaptation to change, innovation, and respect for the diverse voices within an empire are crucial for its survival. But did the Spanish Empire completely disappear? While it is true that its territorial and military power was deeply diminished, the legacy of the empire lives on in ways that continue to shape the modern world. The Spanish language, for example, has become one of the most spoken languages on the planet, serving as a bridge between nations and cultures across America, Europe, and beyond. Countries like Mexico are experiencing notable economic growth, highlighting the dynamism and resilience of nations that were once part of the vast empire. Spanish music resonates in the farthest corners of the globe, carrying rhythms and melodies that are a testament to a rich cultural heritage. The influence of Latin culture, with its vibrant palette of traditions, cuisine, and art, is felt worldwide, enriching the social and cultural fabric of many countries. Furthermore, the spread of Christianity in the Americas has greatly shaped the worldview and values of an entire continent. This religious legacy, along with the influence of Western culture, has contributed to deeply shaping American societies. Therefore, although the imperial power of Spain may have declined, its legacy is indelible and continues to impact the world in significant ways. The history of the Spanish Empire is not only a warning about the dangers of complacency and resistance to change, but also a reminder of how cultural and linguistic influence can transcend the disappearance of an empire, leaving an indelible mark that endures through the centuries. This legacy, in its multiple facets, is a testament to the complexity and richness of the Spanish heritage, a heritage that remains alive, evolving, and contributing to the global cultural mosaic. In addition to the aspects mentioned above, the legacy of the Spanish Empire is palpably manifested in the Spanish-speaking community in the United States, which has a population even larger than that of Spain itself. This phenomenon not only reflects the geographical expansion of the Spanish language, but also its deep integration into American society and culture. States with names of clear Spanish origin, such as California, Nevada, and Arizona, serve as living reminders of the historical Spanish influence in territories that today are integral parts of the United States. These names are not mere relics of the past. They represent the continuity of a cultural heritage that extends from the colonial era to the present. This vibrant and growing presence of the Spanish-speaking community in the United States is a clear indicator that, although empires may fade in terms of political and territorial power, their cultural influence can persist and flourish, adapting and enriching itself over time. Spanish culture, language, and traditions continue to be living, dynamic forces that contribute to the multicultural fabric of the United States and, by extension, the globalized world. This legacy of the Spanish Empire, far from having disappeared, continues to evolve and leave its mark in the 21st century, demonstrating the capacity of culture and language to unite people across time and space. In the 21st century, Spain stands as a vibrant example of resilience and renewal. After overcoming the challenges of its imperial history, it has redefined itself as a nation that values diversity, innovation, and commitment to the future. Today, Spain is a leader in sectors such as renewable energies, technology, and tourism, demonstrating its capacity to pioneer adaptation to a constantly changing world. Its rich and diverse culture continues to attract millions of people from around the world, eager to explore its heritage, art, and cuisine. Additionally, Spain remains a key player on the international stage, promoting dialogue and cooperation in Europe and beyond. Its commitment to promoting human rights and democracy reflects the values of a modern, open, and tolerant society. This dynamism of the 21st century, rooted in a deep historical legacy, is a testimony to the indomitable spirit of Spain, a nation that honors its past while looking hopefully toward the future, positively influencing the globalized world.